Good evening, I'm Jason Galvin. Welcome to a special edition of Cougar News. Tonight we take a look at some of the issues and races voters will decide on November 2nd. We begin with a look at the California gubernatorial race. Meg Whitman, a former Silicon Valley CEO, comes into the race with boatloads of money and no political experience. Attorney General Jerry Brown, on the other hand, has been in California politics since 1969. He's trying to get into the governor's seat for the second time. The race, however, has taken the form of he said, she said. John Gonzalez takes a closer look.
To billionaires like Ms. Whitman and millionaires, it's about a $5 billion tax break that'll go to the richest people in California. 82% goes to
They've shown ad after ad after ad. And with less than a week away from the 2010 California gubernatorial election, the candidates are not playing nice.
I know about a lot of obscure stuff. And when you try to read Meg Whitman's economic plan, you have to be able to get into some pretty obscure stuff.
Jerry Brown should be ashamed of what his allies have tried to do here.
But with all the claims from both sides that have become quite the game of cat and mouse, separating the truth from the lies can be quite difficult for anyone. So which candidate is actually telling us the truth? And the winner is, well, it's hard to say.
In the red corner.
According to Meg Whitman's campaign website, she's claiming that Jerry Brown raised taxes last time he was governor, which is true, but he eventually lowered them. A chart from factcheck.org shows that Brown entered office with a 6.9% tax rate that eventually went up to 7.7% in the middle of his first term, but before he left, it dropped down to 6.5% in his final year, lower than when he entered office. Whitman's campaign is also claiming that while Brown was mayor of Oakland, the crime levels soared. According to factcheck.org, crime in Oakland actually dropped 13%, more than the national trend.
In the blue corner.
Jerry Brown's campaign has been less than spotless. He's attacked Whitman for reportedly resigning as CEO of eBay because of failed business mergers, but there's no proof of that. Factcheck.org shows that when she resigned, there was no evidence it was because of bad business deals. In fact, the Harvard Business Review ranked her 8th out of 100 best-performing CEOs for her entire time in office. His campaign also stated that Meg Whitman failed to vote for 28 years. According to factcheck.org, that's not exactly true. The record shows she registered to vote twice in that time frame, in San Francisco in 1982 and Santa Clara in 1999. She also claims to have voted multiple times throughout.
McCain, obviously.
Oh, so you voted this election?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Now, whether she actually casted those votes remains to be seen, but there's no evidence to say she didn't. For Cougar News, I'm John Gonzalez.
A potential upset is in the works for the California Senate race. In the latest Rasmussen research poll, incumbent Barbara Boxer holds on to a slim 2-point lead over Republican challenger Carly Fiorina. We spoke with COC professor Dr. Phil Gusson about the possibility of Fiorina becoming California's first Republican senator since 1992.
If you'd asked me 3 years ago, not knowing what was going on, will a Republican beat Barbara Boxer? I would have laughed, right? If you said, would a Republican have a chance of beating her, I would have laughed again. Carly Fiorina is in the race. But in her case, I think, because she has some social views, her views on abortion, that are a little bit outside of the California mainstream, I think that might present a problem for her. Although I don't think social issues are going to determine this election. This election is going to be about 3 things: jobs, jobs, and jobs.
There's one name synonymous with Santa Clarita politics. Buck McKeon became the city's first mayor in 1987 and was then elected to the House of Representatives' 25th District in 1992, and that likely isn't going to change anytime soon. In the New York Times projection, Buck McKeon is set to be re-elected by a wide margin. Dr. Phil Gusson says Buck McKeon is one of the few in Congress to not have to worry about keeping their seat.
I mean, Buck McKeon will win, and he'll continue to win. The only way Buck McKeon is going to lose is if he loses a Republican primary election. No Democrat is going to win in this area. Buck McKeon, as long as he can hold on and win the primary elections, he's going to continue to be the representative. He is one person who's not worried on election night, not about his own, whether he's going to be in the majority party, and there's good reason to think that he may wind up in the majority party. That's going to be something new and exciting for him. But I don't think he's worried that much that he might be out of a job come November 2nd.
Meanwhile, in California's 38th Assembly District, incumbent Cameron Smythe is vying for his third and final term. Also in the race are two candidates who say Smythe isn't doing his job in the Assembly. Jose Franco has the story.
The 8th District Assembly race is not expected to be much of one for the incumbent Cameron Smythe. But in a candidates forum seen on SCV TV, each of Smythe's opponents had their chance at making their case to voters.
We have a real choice coming up on November 2nd, not just in California, but across the country as to really the direction we want to see our state and our country go. And that's why I think it's really critical that, that voters get out to the polls, they research their candidates, and they make the best decision on the way they want to see California over the next decade at least.
I'm not a career politician. I have a family. I was raising my kids like other people in Santa Clarita. I moved here in 1988, making sure that the house was painted and the lawn was mowed, and driving back and forth on the freeways and watching Sacramento go from bad to worse.
I think that the Libertarian Party, while some people also might say, why are you going to run because you're not going to win? Well, it's not about today, and it's not about tomorrow, it's not about November. It's about advancing the ideology.
When asked what he would do back in the Assembly, Smythe made clear his intentions of repealing policies he says hurt businesses.
I think the number one thing I would do is move to repeal so many of the burdensome regulations that have been put on businesses here in the state of California. We've lost over the last 2 years over 1 million jobs in the state. 1 million Californians are out of work. Businesses of all sizes have packed up and left the state.
Libertarian candidate Peggy Christensen spoke against government regulations that hinder competition.
Certainly there are very burdensome regulations that only punish people for being productive. That's the last thing we want to do. Most of these regulations are advanced not by people who really have your best interests at heart, but by people who want to restrict competition.
Democratic candidate Diana Shaw took the most shots at Smythe, questioning his presence in the 38th District and whom he represents.
The 38th Assembly District has almost 500,000 people. You go out of Santa Clarita and talk to people in Chatsworth and they go, Cameron who? Because he's not there. I don't understand where anybody would think that he could represent their interests better than me. He could represent BP's interest and Shell Oil's interests, but I can represent the people of California. I don't know anybody anything.
While Smythe is expected to easily win, he says he doesn't take elections for granted.
I'm a believer that I take every election very seriously. I finish at 12:01 on November 2nd. I don't stop until the polls close because I come from a family who respects the voters and knows how important every vote is, and it's something that I never take for granted.
We turn now to one of the more controversial measures on the ballot, Prop 19. Supporters say it will be a boon to the economy and alleviate pressures on law enforcement. Opponents see it the other way. Chase Thibodeau clears the air on Prop 19.
Thanks.
Yes.
Just got a shipment of the dopest dope I've ever smoked. Hands down, dopest dope I've ever smoked. Right
Not
here.
better than the...
Proposition 19 is a measure that will allow for the legal consumption of marijuana. The law will let local governments to impose and collect fees and taxes related to the distribution of cannabis. It gives consumers the right to possess up to 1 ounce for personal consumption, only use marijuana in a non-public place such as a residence, and limits the amount of space the consumer can grow at home.
For people to be smoking pot in the privacy of their own home, it's really nobody's business. Nobody ever died from marijuana. The prohibition of marijuana is an archaic and unfair, hypocritical law, really.
The law would mirror the current alcohol law that only lets folks 21 and over to purchase cannabis. The proponents say the measure would help push California out of its current budget slump. But critics of Prop 19 fear the proposed law will cause problems for law enforcement.
Like I said, I'm going to err on the side of law enforcement who still oppose Prop 19. I think they're the ones on the front line. They're the ones battling every day. So I'm going to side with law enforcement on that.
Another major concern is the current issue of state law versus federal law. As of now, it is a crime to sell and possess marijuana in the United States.
When medical marijuana was first authorized in the state of California, the feds took the same position, that they were opposed to it and they would enforce the law no matter what. Here it's a little bit different. Here you're not just saying it's medical use. Here you're saying everybody gets to smoke it. And I think they may be forced to be a little stronger in their enforcement actions than they have been in the past.
Unlike other states, some believe California may be ready for legalizing marijuana. It has already been accepted medicinally for 14 years. Photo student Kevin Carson believes it won't be a giant leap from medicinal to recreational.
Some are really excited, some aren't. It's anything that might make it easier. It's obviously going to make it easier to get, but then it could make it harder. It just depends on the person, really. But a lot of people I talk to are the people who use it for medical reasons, who have medical issues, herniated backs, knee problems, migraines. They don't really care either way. It's still going to be okay for them.
I think that many of the situations have changed over the years, and this is one of them. I think marijuana is more acceptable today than it ever has been in the past. I think people realize that it's not the evil demon that it was portrayed to be back in the old days.
I'm Chase Thibodeau, Cougar News.
Prop 23 is another measure on the ballot that has been contentious on both sides. A recent poll shows, however, that Prop 23 is losing support among voters. 37% are in favor of it, while 48% oppose the measure that would halt AB 32. That law was set to cut emissions to 1990 levels. Dr. Gusson says the money spent in this campaign and where it's coming from could sway voters against this measure.
I think that because there's been a great deal said about the money supporting this proposition has come from outside of the state, that I think even the draw of, potentially easing, taking off some financial pressure, I don't think that it's going to be enough for Californians to be willing to do this. But I really think it's the outside money that's going to be the problem for a lot of people.
Heard from Dr. Phil Gusson on the upcoming races. You can catch our entire interview starting Thursday right here on our website, cougarnews.com. The state budget has been under heated debate in Sacramento. Currently, it takes a 2/3 vote in the Assembly to pass the budget, and now Prop 25 aims to change the process and pass a budget through a simple majority vote. Austin Dave has the details.
Proposition 25 involves changing California's current budget voting procedures from requiring a 2/3 majority vote to a simple majority vote. Supporters of the constitutional amendment have stated that it holds legislators accountable if they fail to pass the budget on time.
We have to hold legislators accountable. If we had to do a 2/3 vote to select the president, nobody would ever be sitting in that office. It's almost impossible to get 2/3 together to do anything. And most of the states in the union have figured that out. In fact, there are only 3 states that have a 2/3 requirement.
Those in opposition to Prop 25 state that the amendment does not maintain a 2/3 vote requirement to raise or lower taxes.
But the reality is the majority Democrats would use that as an ability to circumvent Prop 13 and raise billions of dollars on fees on Californians, which are, in a sense, taxes. They're really taxes, but they're going to be called fees to circumvent Prop 13. And that is the last thing we need, is to have a budget, while it may be on time, adding tens of billions of dollars in new taxes to Californians.
Prop 25 includes a clause that states that if California's budget is not completed before the deadline, legislators permanently forfeit daily salary and expenses until the budget bill passes.
We save hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, these hundreds of millions of dollars can be used for hiring more teachers.
On average, the state of California spends $50 million for every day that the budget is not approved. If the proposition is passed, however, the state would save an estimated $50,000 when the budget isn't approved on time. Reporting for Cougar News, I'm Austin Dave.
Be sure to tune in live on November 2nd, starting at 9 p.m. on SCB TV and streaming live on cougarnews.com. We'll have all the latest results and reactions from throughout the Santa Clarita Valley. That does it for this special edition of Cougar News. For the latest news and information, log on to cougarnews.com. And don't forget, get out and vote. Thanks for joining us. Good night.